So yeah, we're going to talk about getting back on your bike. Just want to start with a welcome. So we're excited if you're watching this live or recorded. We're glad you're here. I wanted to begin with just a few notes about Ride Illinois. Some folks may be familiar, some may not. Ride Illinois is the statewide bike advocacy organization, previously known as the League of Illinois Bicyclists. So we've been doing this work for about 30 years. And the things that we focus on are listed on the slide here. So trying to improve bike friendliness on roads, increasing the number of trails and improving the trails, legislation and policy, which is, kind of the behind the scenes things, and then cyclist and motorist education. We'll touch on that in a little bit as well. And then we just want people to enjoy riding their bike for recreation and transportation. And as Colin mentioned, we're working to make Illinois better through biking. We are a mighty staff of three, really two and a half. So myself as executive director, Gina as our communications project coordinator, and then Ed is our former executive director who stepped down to part-time, which allowed me to join the organization. So just three of us. We like to think we get a lot done. We have some generous corporate members, which we like to give a quick shout out to. So we appreciate their support. They believe in our mission and help to fund some of our programs as well. And then one initiative, if you will, that we've been working on now for the last, 6-9 months is the idea of building a community around bikes. So in a nutshell, no matter why you ride or where you ride or who you are, we want you to be connected with Ride Illinois. So that's our hashtag Ride Illinois community. And we want to all pedal forward together, as the statement says there. We're going to talk tonight about getting back on your bike. So many, these are tips for folks who are new or returning to biking, which we heard a lot of, especially in the last, say, 15, 18 months with the pandemic. Biking was one activity that CDC and public health officials said, hey, it's safe. You're outside, you're spaced out. And so there's a great interest, which continues even now, right? Even as things are getting kind of closer to back to normal, if you will, in biking. So we want to share some tips, some safety information to make that either whether you're returning to it or getting to it to biking for the first time, safer, more comfortable, more enjoyable. So that's the goal tonight. I want to start with some statistics here, which just kind of paints the picture. As a country, the U.S. is certainly not at the top of the list when it comes to the health statistics. So you can see some of the stats here, just kind of help summarize that. So 32% of adults in Illinois are obese, for example. And I have to say these stats are a year or so old, so that perhaps they've changed, hopefully gotten better, perhaps worse. The youth are overweight as well. And at the same time, we see most states, where commuting by bike or using a bike for transportation is increasing. So that's an exciting stat. So between the health challenges and then the opportunity that biking provides, Ride Illinois is particularly excited, especially now that we're in the midst of this bike boom. Transportation. So I always look at this as a fairly startling slide. And I know, having had young kids who are now in college, that it is, there's a lot of running around, right? And so those one trips within a mile of home making up, 17% of those the trips could easily be replaced when time allows, right? By walking or biking. And then you look at the 41% of trips that are within 2 miles of home. So that's a huge chunk. So just imagine if, say, half of those trips were replaced. Instead of car trips, they're done walking or biking. And then the quote on the bottom just kind of frame the conversation. Riding your bike isn't a chore. It's a gift to yourself and to the planet. So we're coming at this from a very positive angle tonight. Some stats from last year. So many of which are kind of anecdotal because, data tends to lag, but we've heard from whether it's municipalities or forest preserve districts or counties, the increase, like no one said biking went down, right? And so the increase was either 20% all the way up to 110% and beyond. So it's exciting to see that renewed interest for sure. And then bike sales through the roof. Bike shops can't keep them in stock. A large barge and clogging the Suez Canal, that didn't help either. But bike shops are still struggling to keep bikes or get bikes in stock, and those that do come in often are sold pretty quickly. So if you're in the market for a bike, you might have a hard time finding one, but stay patient. And then the question mark about the bike shops, other services that they provide, whether it's repairs or tune-ups or whatnot, helps to keep the local bike shop afloat. But that not all shops offer the same services. So as an advocacy organization who is closely tied to bike shops, we encourage folks to visit their local bike shops and purchase from their local bike shops whenever possible, and help keep, I think we're just shy of 200 local bike shops in Illinois. So we want to see that number increase over time. So let's talk about the benefits of cycling. And some of these I think are pretty obvious. Certainly the health aspect of it. You're outside, you're burning calories, you're getting your heart rate up. It's the physical health, it's the mental health benefits as well. And then emotional. There's a lot of good things that happen when endorphins are churning through your body and your heart's, pumping away. So that's probably the most obvious. Also for the environment, so reducing greenhouse gas emissions leads to cleaner air, leads to less demand for oil and gas. So certainly never a bad thing for there. Finances, and this is one that a lot of people don't think about. The average annual cost of car ownership is about $8,500. In turn, to own a bike for a year costs about $475. So you're factored into those figures is the purchase, the wear and tear, the maintenance, all that kind of stuff, right? And to kind of bring it home even further, if you make a 10-mile trip via bike instead of driving, you could save about $5. So not necessarily a huge amount out of the gate, but let that add up over time, and you will start to see the savings. As far as the community is concerned, communities that are more bikeable and walkable are in higher demand. They will lead to higher real estate prices. They're just more vibrant places to be. They tend to have safer roads. You have greater interaction with neighbors. So lots of good things can come when a community focuses on not just moving cars through the community, but giving residents different ways to get around, such as biking and walking. And lastly, infrastructure. Compare a 1-ton vehicle to a 20-pound bike. The wear and tear on the roads is less. So as people bike more, theoretically, if there's enough people that do that, it can lead to less need to repave roads and resurface roads. And the cost of a bike lane can be anywhere between like $5,000 and $50,000. Compare that to the cost. I'm sorry, that's for a mile. The cost of building a new road is $2 to $10 million. So there's a difference there as well. So that can help your community kind of keep its finances in check. I want to describe, this was some terms that were used to determine or to define 4 types of cyclists. And it came from Roger Geller, who was a planner in Portland, Oregon. It's going on about 20 years that these have kind of been accepted terms. So a strong and fearless cyclist is someone who is pretty much willing to ride anywhere with limited or no bike infrastructure. And when we say that, we're talking, a side path, which is separate off the road. Maybe it's a bike lane. Maybe it's a protected bike lane. Maybe it's even just like painted, call them sharrows with the bike and a couple arrows. So about 1% of people fall into that category. The second category is enthused and confident. So these people are like, yeah, I'm excited. I want to ride more. Boy, if you give me a little bit more, when it comes to infrastructure and I feel a little bit safer, I'm going to do it more. So those enthused and confident people are about 7% of the population. 33% of the people or so, give or take a few percent, they're not going to ride. Either they're physically unable, they have absolutely no interest. That's fine. That's 33% of people. But 60% of people, and this survey has been done for years and years, and it typically comes back between 60 and 65% of people are interested but concerned. And they're saying, if you give me somewhere safe to ride my bike, I will do that. I will do it for recreation, and I will do it for transportation. So from an advocacy organization, that's the pool of people that we want to focus on. The top two categories, we kind of have them hooked, right? They're already out there. But that's 60 to 65%. That's a huge opportunity. And that can have, transformational changes in society if those people are now empowered and feel safe when they're out on their bike. So you might think which category you fall into. You don't have a poll question or anything like that, but think about where you might fall based on those definitions that I shared. So now let's get into the meat of the conversation. And the presentation here is kind of a Q&A, right? So imagine you're asking the question and I'm giving the answer. So the question being, what bike is right for me? And the answer is any bike. You don't need to spend a lot of money on a bike. You just need to have a bike that fits you well, that is properly maintained, and one that you ride fairly regularly. So if you're in the market for a bike, don't feel like you need to spend a lot of money on a bike. The photos that are on the slide show a few different types of bikes. So if we start in the upper left, that's a road bike or a racing bike. You can see it's got the thin tires, and you see the cyclist on it is kind of hunched over. It's really meant for speed, right? So those tend to be more on the high end of the price spectrum. But the goal, for those bikes really tends to be speed more than anything. If we shift to the upper right, you've probably seen these fat tire bikes out there, and yeah, maybe they're a fad. It remains to be seen. When they first came around, they made quite the splash. They have 3 to 4 inch tires and can pretty much go anywhere. So you'll see fat tire bikes around. Those are more for recreation than transportation. You'll find them on off-road trails and things like that. If we go to the bottom right, that's actually the bike I ride most often. It's about 27 years old now. A steel frame. It was a $300 bike when I bought it. Nothing fancy, and it's actually a mountain bike that I put some thicker tires on, and this bike can go anywhere. So it's not going to go super fast like the upper left, that type of bike. It's not, it may be as sturdy as a fat tire bike, but boy, this bike can pretty much take me anywhere. And then bottom left is a hybrid bike, more built for comfort, more built for all conditions. So when someone would ask me, well, what kind of bike should I buy if they're new, or getting back to it, I typically point them to the hybrid bike. So you're going to be more upright, you're going to have slightly thicker tires, and it's just going to be a more comfortable ride. These are just 4 categories. There are plenty of other types of bikes out there, but these 4 should give you a pretty good idea of kind of the general types that are out there. You can get into all sorts of specific bikes and specialized bikes, but this should give you some idea. So those are the types of bikes that are out there. The note about proper sizing, you just want to make sure the bike fits you, that you're not too hunched over, that you're not too stretched out, that your seat is at the right height, meaning when you have 1 foot on the ground and 1 foot on the pedal, that foot that's on the pedal, there's a slight bend to your knee. That's a pretty good gauge. If you go to a bike shop, they can do a professional fit for you, but just using that, a slight bend in the knee for the foot that's on a pedal is a pretty good gauge that your seat is at the right height. Advocates and educators, we talk about the ABC quick check. And what that means is it's a quick check you can do. If you search for that online, you'll find plenty of videos. It's a way to check the air in your tires a way to check that your brakes are functioning properly so that they're going to give you good stopping power. You're going to check the chain to make sure it's not rusted and it's running smoothly. And then you check, most bikes nowadays will have quick release levers. That's what that quick is about. The idea is before you go for any ride, whether it's, zipping a half mile to the library or maybe riding 20 miles with a friend, you check these things before you leave the house. And then that way you don't have to, it lessens the chance you'll have a mechanical issue when you're out riding. And so you won't have to either call for help or figure out some other way home. So check the air in the tires, read on the tire. It'll say, fill to usually a range 40 to 65 pounds per square inch. Check the air, make sure the brakes are going to stop you, make sure your chain's in good working order. And then you should be good for pretty much any trip. And feel free to put questions in the chat, or I don't know if we've got the Q&A. I guess maybe that's more of a webinar feature. The chat will work. Basic maintenance. So things like putting chain lube. I got a little bottle here of chain lube that's going to last, a lifetime. Make sure your chain is lubricated. It shouldn't be wet necessarily because that'll just attract more dust. Just make sure your chain's not rusted and it's got some lubrication on it. And then things like inflating the tires. Those are fairly simple things you can do at home. Anything you're not comfortable doing, we recommend you go to your local bike shop and have them check it out for you. And then the last note here, where can you buy a bike? You can go to a big box store, a Target, a Walmart, for example, pull a bike off the rack and wheel it out and you're good to go. Tends to be the least expensive of the options. And then the more you pay, the more you can afford, you're going to get a better product, within reason. So if the big box store is kind of the entry level, you've got like the sporting goods stores, say a Dick's Sporting Goods, you're going to pay a little bit more. The bike will be higher quality, probably built a little bit better. And then the kind of the top is your local bike shop. So that you're going to pay the most, but you're going to get a higher quality product, and they'll spend more time with you. Bike shop, you go to a bike shop, they should spend a good couple hours with you, trying out different bikes, making different adjustments. So you really do get that personal treatment when you go to a local bike shop. All right, so that's kind of some basics about which bike is right for you. We'll move on next to a helmet. And the question is, do I have to wear one? And there is no helmet law in Illinois. In fact, there may be some municipalities around the country, local municipalities that have helmet laws. But what we found over time is helmet laws they act as a deterrent for people to ride, because they say, if I have to wear a helmet, I'm not going to ride it. Or they could also have become an equity concern where if there is a law, there's another reason to pull somebody over who maybe couldn't afford a helmet. So helmet laws, don't have them in Illinois. So you don't have to wear it, but we of course highly recommend it. They can certainly come in handy if you're going to crash. So there's lots of helmets out there, right? You can spend $30 on a helmet. You could spend $300 on a helmet. What's important is that you purchase a helmet that fits you properly. And I have my helmet here, and I was going to do a quick little demonstration. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a helmet. This helmet I have is maybe $40, and it'll last me several years. And you know what? Let me turn off I see the blurry background is causing the trouble here. So just give me a second here. Gotta go into Zoom, just a sec. I get to see my closet behind me. Okay, so here we go. Nothing fancy. Put a couple stickers on it, dress them up, right? So the proper fitting of a helmet, there's three things to remember, and the photo on the right side of the screen will call out what I feel is the most important. So number one is that the helmet is level on your head. So when I look up, I can kind of see the lip of the helmet here. I could put two fingers and see my fingers. So it's flat. It's not raised so my forehead exposed. It's not too far down. Number two, and you can see here, this is why the picture depicts the proper way for the helmet here. Either number two, actually no, in this case, the photo number two is what we're shooting for. But you can see it forms a V or a Y underneath my earlobe. That keeps the helmet from moving side to side. So that's the adjustment that, when Ride Illinois is out at an event and we're doing helmet fitting, that's the adjustment that we do most often, is underneath the ears, because that helps like little anchors. Okay. And then number three is, so if you think eyes, ears, chin or mouth, I can fit a couple fingers underneath here, but not my whole fist. And it's not too tight either. So I can breathe and I can have a conversation if I'm riding with somebody. And then a lot of helmets nowadays, and I'm not sure if I'll get this right in the screen, but there's a little dial back here. You can hear it kind of click. I dial that in so it gives a nice snug fit on my head. And that's it. Just know that fitting a helmet isn't a one-time thing. If you get a haircut, if you ride in cooler weather and wear something on your head, you may have to make some adjustments. But just make sure you adjust it, and then you're more protected if you do fall, if you were to fall and hit your head. The note about certification: touch any helmet you find, no matter where you go, big box store to specialty bike shop, is going to be certified by the Consumer Product Safety Commission or ANSI. So that just means they've tested it and it's going to protect you if you were to crash. And speaking of which, if you crash, if you can notice a visible crack in what is really just packed styrofoam, you're going to want to replace it. Because if you can see something that is, it's a visual or visible crack, it's just not going to protect you if you were to fall and hit your head again. And otherwise, maybe every 5 to 7 years, you might buy a new helmet, because that styrofoam, it'll just dry out over time. And then the note to set a good example. So for the adults who are listening in, we see a lot of children that don't wear helmets. And so when you're an adult, whether it's for your own kids or grandkids or kids in the neighborhood, go ahead and wear your helmet and set a good example for them so they don't feel maybe out of place when they're wearing a helmet. All right. So now a question about clothing. And the question is, well, what should you wear when you ride? And the answer is, you don't need to look like a professional cyclist. You don't need special clothes to ride a bike. I'm wearing a t-shirt right now with some cargo shorts, and I just got back from running a few errands by bike. Okay. So the photo here shows a pretty wide variety. You've got the gentleman on the left here, nice brightly colored shirt, which helps, but he's just wearing sweatpants and some gym shoes. And then you got the gentleman in the center who's kind of wearing a cycling jacket, and he's got cycling tights, and he's probably got fancy shoes. So it kind of runs the gamut. Base the clothing that you wear, you should base that on what you're doing, where you're going. If you're riding for exercise or recreation, you might wear something that's more moisture wicking, such as like a poly blend shirt or an athletic t-shirt. Or if you want, wear a bike jersey. You could wear bike shorts that have the chamois in them, to protect against chafing. If you're going for longer rides, that can come in handy. But if you're running errands, like I said, I was just throw on a t-shirt and some shorts and have at it. If you're commuting, I do know people who pre-COVID were biking, to work in a suit. It can be done. So if you're commuting and you're going to wear the clothing that you are going to wear at work, you're probably just going to go a little bit slower and maybe don't work up a sweat. If you're wearing other clothing but plan to change at work, you can roll your clothing up and then throw them in some sort of bag like this pannier that I have here. But by rolling the clothes tends to keep them from being wrinkled. So little trick. Racing or touring, kind of similar to what I mentioned with the exercise. It really depends on distance. If you're going further, or pretty much you're going further, riding longer, you probably want some more specialized clothes just to make it a bit more comfortable and avoid some of the chafing that you might encounter. And then riding at night, the key is just be visible. So this little inset photo, that's those jackets are in the headlight of a car, right? So they really stand out. And so reflective or retro-reflective clothing at nighttime is really helpful. You just want to be seen. You want to be visible. So if you're new to cycling, don't run out and buy all the fancy clothes and all the accessories and whatnot. Start small, and then maybe pick some things up as you go. You just want to make sure that you enjoy it, and maybe you're going to do the things you had in mind, when you went out to get the bike. All right. So what should you bring with me? And I will say, depending on where you're going or how long you're gone, you might bring different things. At a minimum, for every ride, bring your wallet. I get my wallet, ID, and insurance card. I actually have a copy of that. I think I have this little kit I have here. So I have a copy of my driver's license and insurance card. So I don't actually have to have, if for some reason I didn't have my wallet, I would have that information. Bring a spare inner tube. So what I have here is an inner tube and an old sock. And I have that because if I get a flat tire and have to replace the tube or patch a tube, my hands are going to get dirty. So the old sock is a rag at the same time, where the tube's just sitting inside there, and the sock's keeping it nice and compressed and compact. So speaking of, if you get a flat tire, whether you or someone, a good Samaritan you encounter, is going to help to fix that tire, you're going to need some way to fill the tire and the tube back up. I have a little hand pump, so this goes in my bag with me. There's also things that are called CO2 cartridges. So yeah, I don't happen to have one with me, but it's a little metal canister that is compressed air. Either the pump or the cartridge is going to let you get enough air into the tube so you can continue your ride, or at least get back to where you started. The pumps and the CO2, they don't have gauges on them, and they don't tend to fill the tire up to maximum capacity. But again, they give you enough air so you can get home. I have a few different tools that I carry with me too, and I carry all of it in that pannier that I showed you earlier. So it is a fairly large bag, but I have this tool here, which has 3 different Allen wrenches on it, which is a lot of accessories or parts of the bike you can loosen and tighten with this tool. But I also have a multi-tool. So this here has screwdrivers and Allen wrenches and you name it. It's got a little chain tool on it. So these multi-tools are really handy, and you can get them pretty inexpensive. So if you're looking to just have something to pop in a bag, the multi-tool is compact and it's got pretty much most of the tools you're going to need. And it's nice to have these too, because you could be that good Samaritan, right? So maybe the person you encounter doesn't have the tools. And I actually ran into someone yesterday who just needed to tighten something. His seat was sinking. So I was able to pop this out of my bag, and he tightened his seat post up, and he was ready to go. So, have these things for you, but have them to maybe help somebody else out as well. And then I think, most, if not all of us, have cell phones nowadays. That comes in handy. If you're running late, if you get stuck in bad weather and need someone to pick you up, or just need to let someone know that you're running late. And also if you get in a crash and you need to either you or maybe you'll encounter someone and you need to call for help, have your phone with you. And then again, as you do longer trips, maybe you're bringing more things with you, but start with the basics, and then you can always build up to additional accessories. All right, let's talk about stopping. And this is something that I get this question all the time. So what's the best way to stop? Should I use, I don't want to go over my handlebars. So should I only use my rear brake, which tends to be on the right? Or, I want to avoid the front brake. And the best way to stop is equal pressure on both brake levers. And that's what that first bullet point is there. So if you have to stop quickly, you squeeze them harder. If you want to slow down, just squeeze them a little bit. But use both brakes. The right pretty much on most bikes nowadays, unless they were built differently or custom, what's on the right side of the bike is going to control the rear. So that means the brakes, as well as if you have a shifter to change gears, that's going to be on the right side. It's going to control the rear the rear elements of the bike. And then, of course, on the left, it's going to control the front. So you just want to make sure that you're using both brakes. You stay in the saddle or on the seat. So you squeeze the brakes, stay on the seat until the bike comes to a stop, and then choose a direction to lean the bike and put your foot down. And be consistent about that. So when I stop, I come to a stop and I lean my bike to the left and I put my left foot down so that I'm ready to go. It becomes second nature. It becomes a habit. So that by staying in the saddle or in the seat until you stop, it's keeping the center of gravity towards the back of the bike, which is going to limit the potential for that rear wheel to come up and go over the handlebars. It rarely happens, but stay in your seat, use both brakes, and when you come to that stop, go ahead and put a foot down. And then the note about different types of brakes. So the photo on the bottom here, the left part of it is kind of the more traditional or more common type of brake, where it's a pad that squeezes against the rim, and that's how the bike stops. So, you could get some water, you could get some oil, the dust could impact how quickly your bike stops. So what manufacturers started doing more recently, and this tends to be on more expensive bikes, and just relatively speaking, not like crazy expensive, but you tend to find what are called disc brakes on those bikes. And so they're further away from the ground, so any potential for oil or rain or water, and it's a different mechanism that, just like the disc brakes in your car, it leads to a more efficient or a shorter stop. So those are the two most common types of brakes. If you're in the market for a bike, you may find the same frame, same everything, difference being the rim brakes versus disc brakes, and maybe the difference in cost is $50, $75. But those are the types of things you can talk to the folks at the bike shop about. Okay, I mentioned the shifters or the derailleur with the right side, right, the right hand controlling the rear derailleur, which is the picture on the top here, versus the left hand controlling the front derailleur, the picture on the bottom. The whole idea behind changing gears is that biking shouldn't be painful, right? Your goal when you're riding a bike is a comfortable cadence, meaning the number of times your pedals go around should be comfortable. You shouldn't be pushing too hard. You shouldn't be, necessarily spinning, right? Pushing too easy. So you want to find a comfortable cadence that allows you to enjoy your ride. Maybe you pedal a little harder if you're doing it for a workout. You pedal a little bit lighter if you're going a longer distance, but find that comfortable cadence for you that's going to make your ride more enjoyable. The one takeaway here, if your derailleur, your shifter has a number on it, the higher the number means the harder you're going to pedal and the faster you're going to go. Whereas just the opposite, the lower the number, the faster you're going to pedal. You're going to get less resistance, and it's going to take more pedaling to kind of get up to speed. Just know that there's no wrong gear. It's whatever the gear works for you in the given situation. So don't feel like, I have to be in, the second gear on the front and number 4 on the back. No, don't worry about any of that. Everybody's different. Situations are different. You've got wind, you've got hills, you got a long day at work, whatever. Just find a gear that suits you for that situation. And then as far as changing gears, you're going to change one gear at a time. And when you do that, you're going to have to pedal one time in order for that chain to physically move from the one gear to the next. So just because you maybe click something doesn't mean the gear has changed until you make one revolution of the pedals. But definitely use gears. It helps, keeps your Well, it keeps your muscles in tune for where you're going. If you're not pedaling too hard or fast, and it just makes the ride more enjoyable. So big proponent of gears. And of course, not every bike has gears, but if you have them, go ahead and use them. You might as well. So we touched on maintenance briefly at the beginning of the presentation, and there's just some basic things that pretty much anybody can do. We just encourage you to practice them. Okay, so you keep your bike running smoothly by maintaining it. We mentioned earlier the basic maintenance using things such as a chain lube. This was $11 for this bottle. I think I've already had it for about 3 years, and it's half full still. So inexpensive, but having a chain that is running smoothly really helps. We mentioned the ABC Quick Check. You're looking for the tire pressure, making sure your tires are not low, making sure your brakes are working. And again, big focus on chain. Chain's what makes everything move. So you're checking your chain. Flat tire. Let me see, this poor little guy here has a flat and he can't go riding with his buddies. Practice. Okay, and we're not going to get into the details, because it's another thing. If you search for, fix a flat tire, you're going to find probably hundreds of YouTube videos. Well, practice fixing a flat tire several times before, so that way you're prepared when you have to do it again, either for you or for someone else. Okay, so you have all the stuff in your bag. You've got a pump, you've got a new tube, you get maybe or a patch kit. But if you're not really that comfortable with how to do it, you will have to rely on the kindness of strangers. But if you can do it, and then maybe you can be that kind stranger, that's a nice feeling. So again, takeaway is just practice it. Look online. Anytime you say, oh, something's rubbing, I hear a noise, look online. You're going to find somebody who has had that situation. And maybe it's just a real quick adjustment that you can fix on your own. But if you can't, or if you're not comfortable, or you don't have the tools, that's where you go to your local bike shop, tell them what the problem is, and they'll get you back up and running pretty quickly. So just know that a well-tuned bike, or a bike that's in good working condition, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to take less effort for you to pedal, and it's just going to be a more enjoyable ride. There's too many people who, they get a flat tire and they hang up their bike for the summer, because they don't want to fix it. They don't want to fix it. So get your bike up and running in good condition, and you're going to notice a difference. All right, so we're going to get into here some traffic laws. Ride Illinois has a resource called Bike Safety Quiz, which really focuses on traffic laws and traffic situations. And so I can't remember if I have a slide on that or not, but I definitely encourage you to go to bikesafetyquiz.com and take the free quiz. But the takeaway here is many traffic laws apply to motorists. So according to the Illinois Vehicle Code, and it's in small text here, but traffic laws apply to persons riding bicycles. There are some exceptions. So for example, you can't ride a bike on an interstate. Conversely, there are exceptions that make biking or getting places by bike a little bit easier. There's things that are such as contraflow bike lanes, which means it's a one-way street for vehicles, but someone on a bike can go the opposite direction. And those are typically obviously posted. So just know there's exceptions either way, but for the most part, the same set of laws apply whether you're driving or riding a bike. We get questions oftentimes about riding on a sidewalk. Oh, can I ride on a sidewalk? Is it illegal? So there is no state law. So the vehicle code, if we look back to what is the state law, says one can ride on a sidewalk, but if you encounter a pedestrian, you're to dismount. So a sidewalk is for pedestrians, okay, and a road is for vehicles such as cars, trucks, and bikes. If you're not comfortable riding on the road, you can ride on the sidewalk. Just know that you need to give that space to pedestrians when you encounter them. So that's why oftentimes, we hear all the time, oh, you're on a bike, get on the sidewalk. Well, it's not really not that much safer, because you're now dealing with pedestrians. So it's certainly not safe for pedestrians. and doesn't make for an efficient way to get places. So yes, a bicyclist may be moving slower than traffic. That's why we stay to the right on the road, and faster moving traffic will pass on the left. So look into the law. I don't know what the law is in Aurora, for example. I know in Elk Grove Village, where I'm at, the only law that says bicycles are not allowed is by the kind of the central business area, if you will, or like the retail area. Anywhere else, cyclists can ride on the sidewalk. All right, some laws that protect cyclists. So you're probably familiar with the 3-foot passing law, which Illinois was one of the first states to pass this law, which states that a motor vehicle must pass with at least 3 feet of space between the bicyclist and the edge of their side view mirror, at least 3 feet. Even 3 feet can be pretty daunting. It happens to me all the time, where a motorist will pass a little too closely for my comfort. I have a little mirror on my helmet, so it's just like the rear view mirror in your car. It allows me to see what's coming up behind me, allows me to react. For example, if I feel a motorist is going to try to squeeze in the same lane as me, I can scooch a little bit to the left well in advance of them coming up to me and kind of force them to go around me. But the 3-foot passing law is meant to protect cyclists. Another law that's relatively new is, and it's actually, this one's not a law, but it's a practice. It's called the Dutch reach. And the idea behind the Dutch reach, it's done in the Netherlands, is motorists should reach to open their car door with their right hand, which kind of you can see it forces my vision to the left, in which case I could look in my side view mirror to see if a cyclist was coming up. So I don't open my door into the path of a cyclist. There's lots of little nuanced laws that are out there. We have this little Illinois bicycle laws card. You can find a PDF on the Ride Illinois website if you search for Illinois bicycle laws, for example, and it just kind of translates, if you will, the laws into terms that really apply to cyclists, because the law can be difficult to understand sometimes. So check out that little free resource. And then know that when you're out on a bike, you represent all cyclists. I would say, don't be that guy, don't be that girl who does something really stupid that either makes the situation dangerous or makes people upset. Adhere to the traffic laws, communicate, use hand signals when you're turning, thank a motorist, say thank you if they do something really nice. Just know that, you represent all the cyclists that are out there. So we want you to leave the people you encounter with a good opinion of someone that's out on the bike. And then if you're interested, we do get into the law pretty detailed. There's an attorney by the name of Brendan Kevinitis from Freeman Kevinitis Law Firm, and he did a bike law webinar for Ride Illinois. So you can find that there's a Ride Illinois YouTube channel, and he dives into all of the different kind of nuances about the laws that apply to cyclists. So that is out there. All right, so just getting into a few more details here. So now we're talking about riding on trails. So how can you be safe while riding on a trail? Keep in mind that when you're on a bike on a trail, you're likely the fastest moving object, right? Unless someone out there is running awfully fast or maybe rollerblading. But in general, bikes are the fastest moving mode that's on a trail. So we recommend trail etiquette. And the idea there is be nice, be smart and do the things that will make sure that you and everybody you pass is going to return home safely. So it starts with announcing when passing. Okay, this is a common complaint for people on trails who are not riding bikes, is that a cyclist they get startled. They don't know when they're coming. They're moving faster. So simply say on your left or ring a bell, and you're going to get so many little waves and thank yous. It's going to feel good. So make sure you announce when you're passing. And just like if you're driving your car, slower traffic stays to the right, or in general, you're going to stay to the right side of the trail and then pass on the left. Okay, so if you're encountering someone, you're going to ring your bell or stay on your left. You give them plenty of space when you pass them. And you might have to slow down. So yeah, a lot of people like to go really fast on trails on their bikes. Maybe they're trying to get their best time, riding a loop or whatever, but only bad things can happen. So you really have to slow down for runners, joggers, walkers, dog walkers. Please, when there's children around, they're unpredictable. So slow down, be safe around children. Be smart. And then if you have to stop, maybe you're taking a break, you're going to get a drink of water, you see a friend, move off the trail. So it allows the flow to move well. And as I mentioned earlier, don't be that guy. Someday I'm going to get a picture of that guy, and it's going to paint the picture perfectly, because he's not announcing, he's going way too fast, he's weaving in and out of traffic or in and out of people on the trail. Don't be that guy. So that's riding on trails. Both trails and roads, have different challenges and can be unsafe if people aren't doing the right thing. So now, of course, riding on a road, you're dealing with motor vehicles that are moving at faster speeds, right? So you really need to be defensive. You need to communicate more. You need to be visible. So bright colored clothing, for example, or lights. I use my lights like in the daytime as well, in a flashing mode. And be predictable. Okay, so people that are driving a car, most people they encounter are driving cars, and so they know what to expect from those people. You as a cyclist should do the same thing. So don't ride against traffic, for example. Ride with the flow of traffic. Do things that those around you are expecting you to do. So that's the predictability part. So the first bullet point here: read beyond the headlines. There was just an unfortunate story last weekend with the famed architect, Helmut John, who unfortunately was struck and killed not too far from Aurora. I've read some stories. I don't know the full situation at this point. When I see the headlines, my heart sinks. At the same time, I say, well, boy, what could have been done differently? And so by reading beyond the headlines, so you don't read that story and say, oh, riding a bike's not safe, right? That's my takeaway. What I want you to take away here. I want you to understand what the cause of that crash was. Think if every car crash were printed in the newspaper or was discussed on the local news at 10 o'clock, that you would never get in your car again, right? So the fact that when a cyclist is severely injured or killed is a headline, it's in part because it is somewhat rare. It's still terrible, but it's somewhat rare. So that little perspective I want to share with you. The smart cycling philosophy states that you fare best when you act and are treated as a driver of a vehicle, going back to the predictability and what the others around you expect. So that's a philosophy that was developed by the League of American Bicyclists, and that's the foundation of all of their bike education classes. So you act and are treated as a driver of a vehicle. Excuse me. We're going to ride as far right as practicable. Maybe not a term you are familiar with, but that doesn't mean you ride as far right as possible. You've probably seen people riding their bikes and they're in the gutter, that concrete between the asphalt and the curb. A lot of junk collects there. You've got storm grates or sewer grates there. That's not the place you want to ride your bike. You want to ride, if you split the lane into thirds, more often than not, you're going to ride in the right third of that lane. So imagine kind of the right tire of a car, right? So a little bit further out. That makes you more visible, and that forces a motorist to have to pass around you versus tempting them to try to squeeze in the same lane as you are because you're so far to the right that they think they can do that. So that's where practicable comes in. It's further to the left than you might think. And a cyclist can take the lane if a lane is too narrow for the cyclist and a motorist to fit in the same lane. So by taking the lane, which is a temporary maneuver, you deter a motorist or several motorists from passing you. The idea there is when it's safe to do so, when it's safe for that motorist to pass again, you go back to your right third and they pass when they have space to do so. All right, a few more notes here. The bullet point about crash prevention skills basically states if you ride your bike safely and defensively, if you avoid others' mistakes, okay, if you wear things to protect you, for example, protecting your eyes. I always ride with some sort of eye protection. And you follow the laws, you can eliminate 90 to 95% of crashes. Okay. And then there's some things, sometimes things just happen. You hit a patch of ice, some loose gravel, you know, something malfunctions on your bike, in which case you have a helmet. You maybe wear some gloves, inexpensive gloves on your hand for a little protection, but you're prepared in case that were to happen. But just know that by following the law and avoiding others' mistakes, you can avoid most crashes. And then my note I mentioned earlier about bikesafetyquiz.com, you'll find free quizzes for adult cyclists, child cyclists, motorists, and truck drivers. And the first three have also been translated to Spanish. So you can take the quiz. It's between 25 and 30 questions. I think that's actually the next slide here. Yeah, 25 and 33 questions, and just learn something. You have multiple chances to get the questions right before you can move on. So we want you to learn from any mistakes you make, and there'll be a rationale provided if you get a question wrong as to why that's the wrong answer. This is all approved by the Secretary of State. It's based on Illinois traffic laws. So it is good information. If you've taken it before, maybe it's been a little while, take it again. The laws haven't changed that drastically, so the content is the same, but it's a good reminder, especially it's National Bike Month, more people getting on their bikes. You're going to see more people if you're out driving on bikes. So I typically recommend for adults, take the cyclist quiz and then take the motorist/driver's ed quiz. And this is just a sample. There's a couple scenarios here that I'd like to point out. This is from the adult cyclist quiz. And so the situation here is you're going straight at an intersection, but there's a right turn only lane. Okay, so which position might you ride in? If you want to take a guess, you can throw it in the chat. I'll explain here. Positions 3 and 4, the cyclist goes into the right turn lane and then is merging back into traffic later on. Okay. Position 1, the cyclist is going right in the center of 2 through lanes. Doesn't quite make sense why someone would do that. And then position 2 is the right third of the lane, straight through the intersection. Predictable, right? You're where you should be. So that's the correct answer. The problem with 3 and 4 is too often cyclists like to be magnets to the curb. So they feel they should go into that turn lane. But then what happens when you get, up to the top here and you have to try to get back into traffic? So hold, choose a line, hold that line and go straight through the intersection. And then you'll get safely to the other side. So that's the adult cyclist question. And this question here is one from the motorist quiz. So the idea here is both a cyclist and a motorist are approaching a red light. The cyclist is stopped. Where should the motorist stop to wait for the green? Number one, it's on the bottom there. You can see that motorist is far back from the cyclist, being very conscientious, safety minded, doesn't want to get too close. Position number 2, closer to the cyclist, but still not right on top of them. And the correct answer here, because of the technology, whether there is what's called a loop or an inductive loop or a loop detector buried in the pavement, or maybe there's a sensor on top of the light across the way that may not pick up something as small as cyclist, actually want the motorist to be closer to the cyclist. This situation just happened to me today, where I kind of had to wave a motorist to pull forward because I couldn't trip the light with my bike. So yeah, we appreciate the being courteous and giving us space, but at the same time, by pulling closer, it's going to help to trip that light and everybody can go on their way. So just a couple other notes here about choosing a route. There's an app for everything, right? There's many apps for routing or finding a route. Things such as Strava, which is the orange logo there. You can route. You can use the app for routing. You can use the app to track your rides. So it's kind of a fun way to keep track of your statistics. Different communities, and I don't know if Aurora has a bike map, but I know Bartlett does, Downers Grove does, Schaumburg does, small little maps that kind of show either the bike routes through town or the lesser travel roads to help you choose how to get from point A to point B. The image on the right here of the state of Illinois, that's the IDOT. They have a series of bike maps. There's 9 of them based on the D1 through D9. And so if you want to go riding your bike in one of those areas, you can request free maps from IDOT if you go to their website. If you just search for IDOT bike maps, you'll find a place you can order paper maps or download. Another note about Strava, the global heat map shows which routes are taken by those that are using their app. So it'll show, if you got two roads kind of running perpendicular, based on color and thickness of a line, which ones cyclists use more often. So you can use that to help choose your route. And then talk to other people. Go to your bike shop, talk to other cyclists you encounter and say, hey, I want to go here. How do you get there? Cyclists, most will love to talk and they'll tell you how to get places. And then now that you are a more confident, more consistent, or you're riding more regularly, it's now your turn to pass on your enjoyment to others. So talk to folks about where you started and now where you are and how, hey, now I'm riding. I rode to meet a friend for dinner, and I rode and checked out this new trail. But just know that, remember where you started, right? And if you're going to be the person encouraging them, it's not about you, right? It's about now where that individual is, meet them where they're at, and kind of pull them along with you. There's nothing, well, there are things more fulfilling, but it's pretty fulfilling when you can find that friend or family member who just wasn't out riding, and they hear about the cool things you're doing, and now you're able to help them get them excited about riding. But start small, right? Again, remember where you came from. Start with a short ride. Share that enthusiasm, that encouragement. Hey, you're doing great. 2 more miles and we're going to stop. Be that coach and cheerleader. And then at a minimum, teach them that ABC quick check. You want to share your knowledge with them. That ABC quick check is kind of the start. And get them used to checking the air in their tires and knowing what a chain that's properly lubricated looks like. But you start small, and kind of the world's your oyster at that point, and you get those folks excited. It's my niece and nephew in the photo on the left, and then my daughter, and then a good friend in the photo on the right. And I've ridden with all of them, so I'd like to encourage folks to keep riding. Just a couple more slides here. If you're riding with kids, this is my son probably 10 years ago. You want to just make sure you're keeping an eye out for them, right? So you're focusing on that safety. You're dangling that carrot, saying we're going to get ice cream, or we're going, whatever it might be. And the more you ride, the more comfortable they're going to be, and the safer you're going to feel riding with them. So the helmet use is tricky with kids, as I mentioned earlier. Go ahead and encourage that from an early age. The biggest tip here I want to share with you is, as an adult, we want you to ride close to the children, but behind them. We want you to look out ahead of them and say, hey, Billy, there's a stop sign ahead, or hey, Susie, there's a car coming from the left, right? So just ride behind the kids and keep looking and listening. They're small in stature. They don't have the motor skills that you have as an adult. So you are their eyes and ears. And then talk to them along the way. You know what that sign means. You know why that paint is on the ground, and just kind of teach them what some of those things mean. There's no magical age when kids can ride on the road. If you're more comfortable with them on the sidewalk, well, they'll ride on the sidewalk. When they get to the point where they're riding on the road, you want to make sure that they're learning as you go. So when they're off, riding with their friends or going places on their own, you'll have that peace of mind that they're a confident cyclist. And then just a couple notes here: be careful near driveways. That's where a lot of crashes happen with children. Even though cars are getting smarter, they're not always smart enough to see, a child small in stature. And if you want to learn more, there's a great resource out there, Chicago Family Biking. They've got tips. They do rides. It's all about riding with kids. So great resource. And then winding down here, how can you make a difference? In your community, advocate for better biking and walking, right? If there's a missing trail segment or maybe not a sidewalk, ask your local either elected officials or municipal staff. Say, we need this here because I can't ride, and other people probably aren't doing that because this is missing. And then there's all these organizations outside of Ride Illinois who are working really towards the same thing, a more bike-friendly state, city, state, country. And so just know that there's folks working on your behalf. And if you have the means to support them, I will speak from a Ride Illinois standpoint, we absolutely would love to have your support. Just another note about Ride Illinois. We're on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Got a cool series of ads running right now, which are crash avoidance related. So you'll see those. But we want to hear from you too. And I think at the end here, I've got my contact information. Shoot me an email, dave@rideillinois.org. You could text that number as well. You got questions, you got suggestions. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And